Hello and welcome back to another episode of Weekly Bee, where I talk to you about my slow handmade wardrobe. So this is where we are up to with the Fiona Sundress. This week has caused me quite a lot of frustrating moments because I have spent weeks on making the toile out of that burgundy bedsheet just to cut out my new fabric, this blue fabric, and not make any of the adjustments that I realized I needed to make when making the toile. Basically, everything that I did, well, not everything, but most of the reason why I did the toile was kind of a waste of time now, because I just went out and cut all of my pattern pieces as they were without making any adjustments to them before cutting out my good fabric. Now, most of the adjustments that I do need to make to fit my body are kind of easy to do even after the fact that I've cut out the pattern pieces, because some of the adjustments that I need to make are let out the side seams by the waist, shorten the straps by 3/8 of an inch, but double that up because I pinched it so it turns out to 3/4 of an inch on the paper piece. And I also need to adjust the skirt for my height and play with the dart on the back of the skirt. But some of these adjustments are quite easy to make even though I have already cut out my pattern piece. Like letting out the side seam is pretty easy, as well as playing around with the dart on the back of the skirt, but shortening the skirt for my height with the slit that is already there, it's a little bit difficult unless I just shorten the skirt from the bottom, which takes away from the slit, because now my slit won't be as high as it should be on my body. It will be lower and a smaller opening. As well, to shorten the strap, I have removed 3/4 of an inch just from one end, and that kind of takes a bit of the shaping away of how it's supposed to sit on my body. But there's not much that I can do unless I recut the pattern pieces, making the adjustments to the paper pattern first. But anyway, without cutting any more pattern pieces out, I have most of the bodice now complete. What I must say as well is when I went to sew up the side seams that I was supposed to let out by 1/8 of an inch, I only remembered once I got to the second side seam. So one side seam is sewn normal and only the other side seam I've let out by 1/8 of an inch. Anyway, having done that just to the one side seam, I feel there is definitely enough space now for me to breathe in around my waist, also because of the fabric. So this fabric, the weave is pretty more spaced out than the bedsheet that I used, meaning that I feel a lot looser using this viscose fabric. So I feel much better, and I'm not going to let out the other side seam, also because if I had to do so, I would have to unpick it and re-sew it, which is not what I want to do at this point, because I've wasted so much time in not only making a toile that I'm not using the adjustments, but not applying the adjustments here, and I don't want to go back on it. I also tried my best in matching up all of the seams from the band to the bodice, and I mentioned to you last week that it was really hard to do that on my toile, that I didn't really pay a lot of attention. But for this one, I really tried to. So I measured where the seam allowance was, and I put some pins on both the band and the bodice to measure, and then I matched up those pins and then clipped the fabric in place then to sew on the machine. And then even though I went to sew with all of that, the measuring, the pins, it still came out slightly off. It's not as bad as my toile where there was 1/2 an inch off, but this one is just under 1/4 inch off. Now, I don't think it's very visible, especially because it's going to be under the arm. And I did think about unpicking it, but then I thought I don't want to unpick the whole band to just re-sew it and then probably get the same result. So I am going to close my eyes on this one and just let the side seams be a little bit off, because I will probably not even remember about that once I've worn it twice, 3 times. The most frustrating part about all of this, having made the toile to see what adjustments I need for the real version, is shortening the skirt. I even put down on my pattern piece, shorten by 1/2 an inch by the knee area, and I was so distracted I completely overlooked it. And the thing about this pattern is there's even an extra piece for you to make the side slit. For me now to shorten the skirt, I'm going to lose this height of the side slit, because I was supposed to shorten it here. That would bring it up a little bit, and of course my slit would start a little higher. But because I didn't do that, now I'll only be able to chop off the bottom of the skirt, and lose that little extra piece of leg that I would be able to show. Now for a less troublesome project, the Paphos pouch I was working on this week is finished. And this is what it looks like. So I have used exactly the same fabrics as I used for my smaller version, but just in reverse. And I absolutely love how they look. I love the combination of the red, pink and purple. And I can see these just being so useful, just even going to the beach, going to a friend's house and just putting a book in, my mobile phone, keys, and basically that's it. I have had a few photos come in already from a tester that has finished, and I absolutely love how black looks quilted, and it looks so cute with the ruffle with little hearts on it. So I'm super excited to see what the other testers come out with, and I cannot wait to get all of their feedback just so that I can get this pattern out, because I am super excited for this one. I don't know if I've mentioned to you here before, but I've definitely mentioned it in my weekly newsletters that I will probably be making these for teacher gifts this year. Both of my daughters are coming to the end of the school year. One is going from year 1 to year 2, and the other one is going from a private nursery, and she's moving into the same school as my eldest. So I definitely want to give their teachers in both these schools just a few small gifts, just to say thank you for taking care of my children throughout the year. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to make the small version or the large version, but I'm leaning more towards making the large version, just one for each teacher. And I'm probably looking at making about 1, 2, 3. So 3 for my eldest daughter, and for my youngest, there are so many nursery nurses in and out of her room. I don't exactly know how many there are, but if we go by what I did a few years ago when my eldest left that same nursery, I made 40 scrunchies for everyone that was working in the nursery, because at the time there was 18 of them. I made 2 scrunchies each and just a few extra, just in case, you know, someone was missing or they didn't like whatever was there. So I'm definitely not going to make 40 of these pouches this year, but I would like to make maybe 5 to 6, probably for the ones that are mainly with her in the room. But only time will tell if I actually will have enough time to make, I don't know, 10 pouches with my eldest school finishing in 3 weeks from now. Now for some knitting news. I am super excited on how my cobalt Ellie Sweater is looking with all of these embroidered lazy daisies on them. I was supposed to go for double stranded, but I'm so happy I went for single stranded because I just love the look of this. I'm not completely finished with embroidering the flowers on the front bodice. I just have a few more spaces at the bottom to do, and then I will be moving on to the sleeves. They have been working out a little bit quicker than what my first embroidered flower went, because I told you last week I took about 20 minutes just to make the one, but I've been averaging about 5-ish minutes on every other flower, just because I want to get them right. So I have been undoing quite a few strands until I have been happy with how it looks in the end. And for my daughter's karate lesson this week, I didn't take the sweater with because it is just big now, because it's basically finished and I just need to embroider the flowers on. So I left this project at home and I took along the other yarn that I want to make the take it or leave it sweater in, which is the yarn that I got from Wool Warehouse, and it's the Yarn Smith Create Chunky in white. So I took a skein with and my swatches along with the needles that I had made the test swatches in, and when I was measuring them, they were completely off. Somehow they had expanded, meaning that if I was to make it in those needles and I make my sweater and a few weeks down the road it expands, it's definitely not going to be the size that I want it to be. Not to mention that I completely forgot to take a smaller needle to do the ribbing in, because generally when you do the cuffs on the sleeves or at the bottom of the sweater, it is done in a smaller needle because the ribbing stretches out a lot more. So I forgot to take a smaller needle with, which meant that I did not start even on the ribbing at the karate lesson. I was just kind of bored there on Friday this time. But then on Sunday, after coming back from a friend's house, I had my knitting in the car, so I managed to cast on. And after casting on for the front bodice, I then thought to myself, didn't I want to add the silver thread to this to make it nicer, prettier, because I'm probably not going to like the plain white. So because I forgot to take my thread with, I then could not continue there either. But when we got home, I managed to grab my silver thread and I started knitting the ribbing. I have not completed the ribbing. I've got, I think, 5 more rows to go, but I'm definitely loving how the silver thread is looking together with the white one. For the rest of the sweater, I'm probably not going to be using the same needles for the test swatch because I don't want my sweater to expand. So I'm just going to wing it and go with an 8mm needle and pray for the best. Something else exciting that happened this week was my daughter started sewing. She's only 6 years old, but she walked in here the other day while I was busy working on my computer, and I asked her, do you want to do something on the sewing machine? And she was so excited. She screamed, yay! So I took some scrap cut-offs from my Fiona Sundress and we just started experimenting with a whole bunch of stitches. After a few goes, she didn't even need me anymore to tell her to lower the needle into the fabric or put the presser foot down or cut the threads when pulling out the project from underneath the presser foot. She just kind of took to it naturally. The only problem now is I'm gonna be losing my seat at the sewing machine. She has been wanting to sew every single day, and practically every 5 minutes she's saying, can I sew now? Can I sew now? Can I sew some curtains? I want to sew a blanket for my doll. I want to sew a skirt with ruffles and it needs to look like this and like that. And it's so exciting to see her dream up things that she wants to make, but I'm kind of dreading that I'm going to be losing all of my fabric and some sewing time at the machine. Of course, when you have 2 children, the other one wants to take part as well. And my youngest is 3 years old, so I definitely cannot leave her completely alone with the sewing machine. Neither do I leave my 6-year-old. I'm still sitting next to her, but I am okay for her to put the presser foot down, lower the needle down by herself and push start. Whereas with my younger one, I don't want to do that because I'm very scared. She's very clumsy, so leaving her on a sewing machine, not only the age thing, but plus the clumsiness, for me is just not a very good mix. So yesterday I had both of them here in the sewing room, both of them each on a machine, and it was just constantly looking from one side to the next. I was even getting a headache and making myself dizzy, stressing, seeing that no one put a needle through their fingers or hands. But yeah, it was a very nice experience being able to share something that I love with them and seeing them really enjoy it. So who knows, in a couple of months, maybe my eldest daughter will be making her own clothes as well. Thank you for catching up with me today, and leave a comment down below with what are you currently working on. That's it from me today. Bye for now.